kindness, that much kindness. We're on page Shin Pei Tes. Middle paragraph. The fifth line. V'hinei b'tfila satzim. I'm sorry I'm doing this. I Pasha didn't dream that the school year ends whenever we get to Shavuos. I was sure I had 2 weeks. Somebody kept on saying, Rabbi, you're going too slow, you're not going to finish. And he was right. I didn't realize. So I have a bunch of learning periods, but it's not, the distribution of the girls is not going to allow me to teach Maimer. So let me tell you what's going on and we're going to learn. I would advise you today to keep your finger on the place, like I told you in the first grade, because we're doing a lot of reading. Okay? We're learning a Gemara. That the Rebbe was told by Eliyahu Hanavi that Rabbi Chia and his 2 sons are like the 3 of us when it comes to tefillah. So Rebbe got them together, the 2 sons of Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Chia. He sent them to the Yomid to daven. They said, Masha Beruach, the winds began to blow. They said, Mered Geshem began to rain. They said, Mechai Ameis, when the world almost shook. It says that it had to be disrupted. The davening had to be interrupted because whatever they said happened. So of course the kasha is, if Rabbi Chia and his children were so powerful that whatever they davened for would happen, they davened 3 times a day. Why did you have to have that the Rebbe would get them together, make a minyan, and make them into the Shliach Tzibur? So there's going to be 3 points here, people. 3 points. Number 1, the tefillah of Rabbi Chia and his children. Number 2, being a chazan, being a Shliach Tzibur. Those 2 points we talked about on Thursday last. We're going to continue it today. And number 3, we're going to have at the very bottom of this page, at the bottom of page Shin Pei Tes, we're going to have additional Nakuda. And the number 3 is that Rebbe sent them. There are going to be 3 ideas that together, compounded, are going to explain why the tefillah was effective as it was. Number 1, Rabbi Chia and his sons like the 3 of us. Number 2, they were davening as Shluchei Tzibur. And number 3, Rebbe sent them. So number 1, if Rabbi Chia and his children daven, whatever they daven for happens, like the others. So why do you have to have a minyan? So the Rebbe suggested, no, why do they have to be chazon? Why does it have to be the shliach tzibur? And the Rebbe suggested that when you daven by yourself, you get what you ask for. Beruchnius. When you're a shliach tzibur, it happens begashmis. This is what the Rebbe started to say. But what's going to end up happening is the Rebbe is going to explain that the specific power of this tefillah, that what they daven for, they get immediately, and they get it delivered immediately. Begashmius requires all 3 things. Rabbi Chia and his sons have to be shliach tzibur, and the Rebbe has to send them. Okay, let's go quickly. Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, wait. Shliach tzibur is the chassan?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. And what was the third one?
That Rabbeinu HaKadosh made the minyan. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, the compiler of the Mishnah, sent them to the Yomid.
Sent Rabbi his sons.
And his sons, the 3 of them, yes.
Yeah, and his sons were sent by
Rabbeinu HaKadosh, to be the chazan, yes. So let's read. V'hinei b'tfilas tzibur. I'm sorry I'm doing this, but I want to finish, okay? V'hinei, and I think that some of you want to finish as well. B'tfilas tzibur yesh kama chalukim madreges. We know that the difference between the prayer of an individual and the prayer of 10 is that the Gemara says that when 10 people daven, Hashem always gives you what you ask for. And when one person davens, the Eibishter looks at you and decides if he wants to give it to you. Okay, that's the first idea, right? When you daven b'yechidus and you ask Hashem for something, He says, I have to decide if you deserve it. When you ask for it with a minyan, Hashem gives it to you. But the Rebbe suggested that maybe even when you daven b'yechidus, you also get what you want, but you get it only beruchnius, spiritually. If you daven with a minyan, this is when you get it begashmius. This is what the Rebbe suggested. They do. It's called going to shul. Davening with a minyan doesn't mean like Dishach Naritzach. I feel this so deep. I could be wrong. But if you look at Netanya, you get 10 Jews in a room who are the Shoyim Gemurim. R'shaim gemurim. That's a minyan right there. And they're playing cards, they're fighting with each other. 10 yidden in a room is a minyan. Now obviously it would be nice if there's a chazan and everyone is behaving. You daven in a shul with 10 yidden, on a certain level for sure, it's tefillah b'tzibur. Now, v'hine, b'tefillah tzibur kamech lukam adregis. If we're going to go with the model that even when one person davens, he gets what he asks for. But he gets it beruchnias. And when 10 people ask for something, they get it begashmias. So that should be enough. I said, but wait, it's more complicated than that. Why? When 10 people daven, yesh kamech lukam adregis, there's different levels. Because of the following fact, please look inside. Or don't look inside, but sleep. Okay? If you're going to listen, you're going to have to follow inside. Because not all requests are equal. If you're asking for a bigger thing, particularly if you're asking for something very big, like Tchias HaMeis, I apologize, why doesn't he know my schedule? And particularly, when the minyan davens, they don't deserve it. So, number one, you have to daven harder. Number two, the chazen should be old, or at least a very special member of the community, that the prayer should be heard. In other words, it's not just two levels, One person davens and gets what he wants, Baruch is 10 people daven and get what they want, Bagashmis. It depends what you're asking for, Chana asked for children. She was not meant to have children. She had to daven hard, right? A woman is pregnant and she wants to carry the baby to term and to have a healthy pregnancy. It's also a tefillah. But it's not the same tefillah. So what you're davening for determines how powerful the tefillah is, how big the minyan has to be, and how great the chazan needs to be. V'apizeh, accordingly, listen, maybe the pshat would be the following. What was so unique? It's not enough a minyan, but you have to have daf Rabbi and his children. That the fact, through their particular prayer, when they were the chazanim, Nashiv Zeka, the wind blew, V'asamit, and it rained, parenthesis, Begashmi is physically, Ube'iked is primarily Mitzad HaMayla, the Tfilas Rabbim, was not because of them, but because of 10 Yidden. When 10 Yidden daven, they get what they ask for. So why do you need Dafke Rabchia? Ella. Shegam betfilas tzibur, even when a minyan is davening. Parenthesis. Ubefrat bebakosha gedoyla, especially when it's a very special prayer. She'enat tzibur u'oyala, that the people don't deserve it. So you have to have a special chazan. Tzarich shashliach tzibur, that the chazan yihi yami should be the kind of person shetfilas and ishmas, his prayer is heard. So what the Rebbe is doing is he's splitting it up into 3. If you daven alone, you get what you want, beruchnias. You daven with a minyan, you get what you want, begashmias. If you want something big, you got to have a special chazan. And the special chazan is Rabchia. So that's what the Rebbe is saying. One yid davens and gets what he wants, beruchnias. Any 10 yidden who want stop talking gets what they want, begashmias. If it's a big deal, you need a big chazan. And the Rebbe says, not enough. He changes his mind. Avo. It's not enough. For those of you who lost the place, it's page Shin Pei Tes, that big fat paragraph, right in the middle, beginning of the line. The Mizeh Sha'omru, from the fact that we say, we compared Achei and his sons to Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Mashmat indicates, it implies, the Zeh Sha'aldei Tfilas, of the fact that their prayer was so strong that Nashav Zeka, the wind blew, V'asamit, and it rained, is it's because of who they were. And not that they were better chazan, but they were shetfilasam nishmas ketfilas others, they're equal to the others. So one yid daven gets what he wants, beruchni is 10 yid daven to get what they want, bagashmi is Rabchi and his children, that's another level. It's hard to say that Rabchi and his children are just a better chazan. It's a lot more than just a better chazan. So what is it that required Achei and his children? So he explains. Afal became. On the other hand, even though you can't just call Achei and his sons are better chazan, they're much more than that. On the other hand, the fact that the prayer worked so immediately and the Yidden got what they wanted, begashmius, is because they're the chazan. In other words, the Rebbe is saying, if just to use numbers, you really have 4 ideas here, not 3. Number 1, an individual davens. Number 2, 10 people daven. Number 3, you daven with a special chazan. And number 4, you're davening with Achei and his sons. That's not just a special chazan. That's the others. So break it down. 1 person gets his tefillah answered, beruchnius. 10 people get what they want, begashmius, if it's not too much of a request. 10 people with a really good chazan will get what they want, even if it's a difficult request. So what's Achei and his kids add into the equation? What's the 4th idea? That they're special, and they're also chazanim. So the Rebbe answers. Ve'ha'inyan hu, and the answer is, and I'll tell you the nekuda. Okay, the nekuda is, that Achei and his children were asking for something that they didn't even want. It wasn't their request, it was somebody else's request. And when you're davening for somebody else, A, you have to be chazan of the people who have that request, and B, it's not enough to be a choshev yid, you have to be Achei. That's how the Rebbe is going to answer the question. Let's read it. Okay, go in it. This fact, that when a person davens, he brings the prayers down begashmius, to the extent, when a person davens and he brings it down physically, nase shinoi ba'nevroyim, it changes the physical world, it heals the sick, it blesses our parnasa, as opposed to mitzvahs, rather than learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, which is be'ikil and ma'ut and parallel. I spoke about this in earlier classes, and I don't have time to do this justice. But it says in Tanya that davening is lower than learning and lower than mitzvahs in many ways, except one. When you learn Torah, you don't change the world unless you're Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. When you do mitzvahs, you don't change the world. Oh yes, the Lubavitcher Rebbe will let kids daven by the Kaiser. When you daven, you change the world. Someone is sick, you daven, they become better. Someone is poor, you daven, they get panos. Someone needs a shidduch, you daven, they get a shidduch. Oh man, yeah, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So davening has 1 mile that comes down begashmius, but it's got to be yours. You got to care. Look inside. Hu kishaham shacha begashmius. 8 lines from the end of the paragraph. It's when the physical thing you're bringing down is mish'alais srachav deham ispala. When I'm davening for me, it works. Just like you know from Chumash Rashi. Tell me where this Rashi is. Einei doimet tfilas choyle. Yishmael davens and Hagar davens. The pasuk says Hashem heard Yishmael's prayer. Why? He was sick. Rabbi Achei and his children sat in the Beis HaMedrash and learned. You know, you ask the average kid today, where does chicken come from? He says it comes from the butcher store, wrapped in cellophane and plastic. He doesn't know the chicken was a living animal, and the chicken had to eat food, and the food had to be planted in a farm, and the farm is up in the mountains, and at those farms they need water, and if there's no water, the corn dies, and the chickens don't know what to eat, and you can't buy chicken in cellophane and plastic. We don't realize it. Rabbi Achei and his children got the chicken in the cellophane and the plastic, sort of. They were not farmers. They didn't daven for rain for themselves. They davened for rain for other people. This is unusual. The idea that if I daven alone, I get it beruchnis. If I daven in a minyan, I get it begashmis. And I daven with a big chasna, I can even bring down difficult begashmis, is predicated on the assumption that I need it. I need it for me. I'm davening for me. It's a minigiyah. It matters to me. Like Chana daven, it mattered to her. Rabbi Achei and his children, what makes them exceptional is they're davening for somebody else. And it works. Keep reading. Bracket, even when a person is davening for himself, not everybody can ask for everything. The Nesev la'achilik shem feels yachad feels rabbi. First of all, when you daven alone, it only happens beruchnius. We daven with a minyan, it happens begashmius. But still, yesh chiluk gam bedargas adam mispalo. Even when you're davening either alone or with a minyan, that means parenthesis hayochma da'atibur. Yesh Misha, not everybody's, Hashem doesn't hear everybody the same. You see what I'm saying? So the Rebbe says, for sure the Eibishter answers you in one way or another. But not everything you ask for is going to happen physically in this world, especially right away. It depends on what the nature of the prayer is. So the three levels that you have before the Abchia are, if you daven alone, you're answered beruchnias. If you daven with a minyan, you're answered begashmias, if it's not too much of a request. If you daven with a good chazan, you're answered begashmias, even if it's a hard request. And depending on how hard it is, and depending on how good the chazan is, that's how much the request works. But it has to be your request.
What does it mean, too big of a request?
Huh?
What does it mean, too big of a request?
A woman, you know the story with the Rebbe? I can't get over the story. Where's my phone? A woman tells the Rebbe she doesn't want to get married. Why? Because she's very angry. I've told you the story. Very angry, and she's not going to get along with her husband. She's not going to get along with her kids. So the Rebbe tells her to get married, to have a lot of children. Your children will teach you patience. Derweile volunteer in a nursery to take care of very little kids, to learn empathy. Right? They get married. She doesn't get pregnant. They go to the doctor, and the doctor tells her she doesn't have the plumbing. She doesn't have the plumbing to have kids. You understand? She has what's called infantile uterine syndrome. I don't know what it is, but she doesn't have the plumbing that a woman needs to hold babies. So she goes out of the doctor's office and says to her husband, what's going to be? And the Rebbe, he said, the Rebbe told you have a lot of kids, right? Now, of course, the Rebbe didn't know that she doesn't have the plumbing. If the Rebbe knew, he wouldn't have said it, right? Of course. She had 13 kids, hello, on the plumbing. 13 children. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Elemento. You understand? 13 kids. When she was going into, what do they call it? When you stop ovulating, she goes to a doctor, and the doctor says to her, you're an Orthodox woman. She says, yeah. He says, it must be very hard for you. She says, why? He says, in the Orthodox community, there's a lot of kids. You never had any children. She said, I had never had children. I got a Shia Samecha with the 3 Urems, you know? A Shia Es, Amecha, Varech Es, Nachasecha, Urem, Benase Mado Island. So the doctor, it can't be. You don't have the plumbing. So here's my picture. Eat your heart out. You understand what's the big request? Hello? You're not sure. I can't explain it any better than that.
No, I understand the story. I'm trying to understand.
So when a woman is healthy and she has all the pieces and she gets married and she asks a bracha for children, it's also a tefillah. But a woman has no plumbing and she davens, has 13 kids, it's not the same request. There's big ones and little ones. There's teva and there's nest. The Eibishter made these systems. So depending on how big the bakosh is, that's how powerful the tefillah has to be. Yochid has one power. Tzibur has a second power. A good chazan has a third power. And the more powerful the tefillah is, the more powerful the tefillah needs to be. Du verstehst the house nicht? Okay, good. Let's go. The Valley, we told the story. That story you got to say once a week. That nice. Unbelievable. It's not normal. Weißt du, Meis bin Tzemach Tzedek. Tzemach Tzedek. Meis bin Tzemach Tzedek. There was a woman who was an aguna. Her husband disappeared, Nebuch. And they weren't all rotten. Some of them were, but it was a gefährliche time. There was no parnasa. People pushed it. They couldn't take the stress. They disappeared. And she's wandering around like a meshuggah. And ice man, she can't. Her husband disappeared. On top of that, she had a 12-year-old who was a mute. The kid couldn't speak. She came to Lubavitch, and they told her that the Rebbe doesn't see women. The Tzemach Tzedek had kufas, they didn't see women in Yechidas. So she went to the Rebbetzin. So the Rebbe said, listen, I'll tell you what to do. My husband is going to go out of his room to eat breakfast. Go into the house, into the residence. When my husband is out of the room, take your son, put him in my husband's room under the table with a note, asking where your husband is. And my husband, back in his office, your son will come out from his hiding place and he'll address the Rebbe. Anyway, the little boy climbs under the table, and the Tzemach Tzedek comes back in after breakfast. The boy comes out of his hiding place, and he hands the Rebbe the note. The Rebbe reads it, looks at the little boy, and says, "Gezog the mama the tata vet kum." Go tell your mother your father's going to come. Anyway, the boy walks to the Tzemach Tzedek, walks up to his mother, and says, "The Rebbe gezog the tata vet kum," and the woman faints. So they came to the Tzemach Tzedek and said, you know the woman, the guy was a mute. You know what Tzemach Tzedek answered? I didn't know. I wouldn't have said it. If I knew he was a mute, I wouldn't have been nicht gewusst. The Rebbe never nicht gewusst that Mrs. Weiss doesn't have a rechem. She didn't tell him. Because she didn't know herself she doesn't have a rechem. Du wirst haben Masach Kinder, finished. It's called Yaakov, and then the Mitzvah says like this, and the Rebbe says like this. So the big chassid, his name was Shmuel Levittin. And he used to say, what's the difference between a Rebbe and a tzaddik? A tzaddik tells you what's going to be, and a Rebbe, that what he tells you, that's what is. A tzaddik, vos wird sein, sagt a Rebbe, vos sagt wird sein. A tzaddik tells you the future, a Rebbe makes the future. You understand? That's special. That's really very special. Let's finish. V'kiv, and I'm 6 lines at the end of the paragraph. Whereas, shaham shochev de mashev aruach hul, davening for rain and wind. Lo yehoyu mishalis tzercheim d'rabchi ubana. It wasn't their issue. They were, like I said, they got chicken in cellophane and plastic. They were not farmers. Lochein, which is why al yedei tfilos their davening. Shet tfilu mispalaf, that's what they daven by themselves. Himshichu yonim ela beruchnis. They brought it down only spiritually. Bedugmas hamshoch al Torah mitzvahs, which is how you bring down ruchnius through Torah mitzvahs. And therefore, kishehem ed oisam Rebbe lifnei ateva. When Rebbe puts them in front of the yomit, whatever teva means, teva is a very interesting word. You know what the words lifnei ateva means? Does anyone know Hebrew? I told you in the last class, didn't I?
Yeah.
What does lifnei ateva mean? That the teva is behind you. Doesn't mean in front of the Amid, the teva, the box is behind you. When Rebbe puts them in front of the teva to daven, V'nasei shluchei tzibur de Klal Yisrael, they became the representative of the whole of Klal Yisrael. Ayedei, listen to these words. Nichlalu inyanim eile b'mishalas tarcheim. By joining with the community, and the community needed rain, and they were the shluchim of the community, the rain became their issue. And because rain became their issue, that's why it happened in Begashmi. That Nesef, in addition to the fact, the fact that they're being the chazan of Klal Yisrael, the power of the rabbim, there's the additional koyach that it becomes their request, which is why through their prayer, it happens also physically. Girls, if you're keeping score at home, that's the only way to do this. When you learn this quickly, all you can do is outline. When a yid davens alone, Hashem. So first he said you don't necessarily get answered. But in this paragraph, the Rebbe said, when you daven even by yourself, you always get answered. But it's possible it's only beruchnius. When you daven with a minyan, you ask for a simple request, you're going to get it in begashmius. If you're davening for a difficult request, you need a bigger chazan. But for a chazan who's big to daven, and it's not even his request, and it should come down begashmius, it's got to be davei sa'elam. It has to be Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yankiv. Because then, by them being the chazan, something which is not their business becomes their business, and it comes down even begashmius. Go ahead, talk loud.
Can you explain the idea that people say that when you daven for someone else, it comes better? Or
it's not a lot of people. It's a Rashi in Chumash.
When you daven for someone else.
Yeah. Where's that Rashi? Avram Poka the sword of Hashem Poka the sword of Rashi. That the pasuk before it says Vayispal Avram al Avimelech Val Beisi al Avodav. Right? Hashem healed Avimelech Vayeledu. Vayeledu means they're able to go to the bathroom, but the lashon of the pasuk is Vayeledu. And the next pasuk it says Sarah became pregnant. Says Rashi, when you have a need and you're davening for somebody else, you get that answer for yourself first. That's what they say. So they is a Rashi. The shushking has to stop. I'm getting very, very nervous. I'm getting very, very, when I get nervous, it's very, very dangerous.
It's the opposite.
But it's your need also. What if it's not your need? Rabbi didn't have this need. He didn't have the need. So even when he davened, it was all theoretical. Huh?
So when you daven for someone else, you're not davening for your need.
He davened for somebody else as the chazan. So he's a part of the chabura. That's what makes it his need. Not because he's davening somebody else, because he's davening somebody else as the chazan. You're asking a good question. You're really making it very hard for the rabbi not to get stumped. You may be stumping me, but I'm not figuring out that I'm being stumped. Okay, but those are the 4 steps. You daven alone, you get it beruchnis. You daven with a minyan, and it's a simple request, you get it begashmias. You daven with a minyan with a good chazan, even if it's a harder request. But to daven for a request that somebody else has that's not yours, and it should be effective, you got to be the chazan, and you have to be Avraham and Tzachon Yankov. You had your hand raised, talk loud.
Sorry, can you just re-explain the part where the lyhadus are, like, where it comes in?
Okay, say it loud. I'm deaf.
Are you able to explain how the lyhadus and Rabbi are connected? Like,
Oh, the Gemara says it.
you just say it.
The Gemara says that the Rabbeinu HaKadosh was told by Eliyahu Navi that the davening of Achei and his 2 sons, 3 people, Ini, Mini, and Maini, is the same as Avraham and Tzachon Yankov. More than that, we don't got. Now, but there's another point. Go ahead, talk loud.
Who's the Rosh Hashanah today?
I don't want to be cynical. Eliyahu Navi told Rabbeinu HaKadosh, I'm not Rabbeinu HaKadosh, I'm not Eliyahu Navi. I mean, we have an address, you know that. We have an address that's been proven to work. Begashmias. But I don't know what to tell you. I don't know. But there's a 5th point. And the 5th point is that the Rebbe is sending him. Next paragraph, bottom of page Shin Peites. If you didn't think it was possible, look where we're holding. There's another point. The Zed, that the fact, that the prayer of Rabbi and his children, bracket, in addition to the fact that they were the representatives of the community, moreover, that the idea of rain and wind became their need. Right? The Rebbe repeats the points that he added in this paragraph. The fact that Noshev Zeket, that it worked, has another reason. And that is, Lefisha Rebbe, turn the page. Shahoya Sara Torah. Rebbe, who is the master of the Torah, he made him chazan. It's another point. In addition to all the points we have so far, and we have 4. A yachid, a rabbim, a special chazan, and Rabbi and his children. There's a 5th point, that the person who sent him to the Yomit, his Inyan was Torah. Now girls, I want to talk over what I told you. I want to talk over what I told you in the earlier classes. I know we're going quickly, and I am sorry for that. If you listen to the previous classes, you'll remember this. Usually, davening is more effective than learning. Davening is more effective than learning. As per, who's the prototypical davener? Choni Amagal, in the Mishnah Masechta Tainis. Choni Amagal davened by threatening God. He made a circle and said, I'm not getting out of the circle till it rains, whatever that circle means. I saw in the Rebbe Rashab Siches that when people want to do Kalei Sanefesh, they make a circle, the same Lashon Mishnah, Og Uga, they climb inside a circle. This is very Kabbalistic stuff. Choni Amagal davened, they made it rain. But he davened. One time it was not enough. One time it was too much. You have to refine it. So usually the way to get what you want is through davening, but you got to be Choni Amagal. In order for Torah to work, you have to be Rab Shimon Bar Yochai. And Rab Shimon Bar Yochai is Terasei Yom Nasei. You know what Terasei Yom Nasei means? Rab Shimon Bar Yochai learned Torah. And his wife didn't support him by going to college and getting a degree and making money. His wife sat home and watched him learn. And the Torah fed him big gashmias. Terasei Yom Nasei means a Yid who is in such a high madrege that from Torah alone he has parnasa. Not he learns Torah and the wife supports him, or the government. He learns Torah and the parnasa comes as madrege Terasei Yom Nasei, which is the highest level possible. But Terasei Yom Nasei has a catch. A person in madrege Terasei Yom Nasei Shem Bar Yochai learns and he gets what he needs. No negotiations. Rabbi Shimon Yochai did not tell the Eibush that I want it like this, I want it like this. He learned Torah and he got it exactly the way he needed it. And in the story of Rabbi Shimon Yochai in the Zohar, I told you the story. The people came to Rabbi Shimon Yochai to daven for rain. They didn't even walk into his room. Rabbi Shimon Yochai saw a bunch of people coming, and he understood they have a need. You know what happened next in the story? His Talmidim started to flatter him. One of them called him Shabbos, another called him something else. One of them called him Man Pnei Adon Avai Dor Ashbi. They said they were Mishabech Rabbi Shimon Yochai, and he said Teira Hini Mativ Manoim Shevezachem Yochad. Before the people even said what they wanted, then it rained. So Torah is a special power if you're a special learner. Torah seim nasi. In other words, don't forget this. Usually, if you want something, you got to daven. But if you're in the Madrega of Rashbi, your Torah can get you what you need begashmias, and in a much more efficient, and a much more direct, and a much more immediate way. So the Rebbe is saying, as a fact, and you can debate this, that Rabbeinu HaKodesh was Torah seim nasi. Even though he was one of the richest people who ever lived. Remember that? Rabbeinu HaKodesh and Antoninus were friends. He was a descendant of Yankov Avinu, and he was in the Havel of Esav Arasha. There's a Gemara that tells really wacky stories about the relationship between Antoninus and Rebbe. He was a very, very, very rich man, but the Rebbe holds that the Rabbeinu HaKodesh's Torah was like the Torah of Rabbi Shimon. So say nothing. And this adds even more to the 4 points we had earlier about Rabbi Chia and his children. And for the 5th time, what are the 4 points? Number 1, when a person davens by himself, Hashem answers you. Number 2, if you daven with a minyan, Hashem answers you bagashmias if the request is not too big. Number 3, if you daven with a minyan and you have a very, very great chazan, you'll get what you want, even if the request is very big, because of the power of that chazan. Number 4, if it's Rabbi Chia and his children, you'll get what you want, even if they don't even need it for themselves. And now we have a 5th point. Rebbe sent them. And Rebbe is called Sar HaTorah. And again, I'm reading into the Rebbe's words, and this is the pshat. Sar HaTorah means that the madrega of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is the same madrega of Shem Yochai, which is a big chiddush. He learned Torah, the Eibush gave him food. Vayedei Zed, first line patience, how they look inside, bitte, please. And through this, Haya b'tfilasam gam inyan HaTorah. The prayer of Rabbi Chia and his sons, in addition to the 4 things we listed before, has the mile of Torah. Now, earlier we said that Torah doesn't change the physical world. On the previous page we said, Torah doesn't change the physical world. You turn the page over to Torah does. The Torah says before we were talking about regular Torah from regular people. Regular Torah from regular people doesn't change anything. But the Rebbe's tefillah is Torah seim nasi does. And he explains. And the pshat is azoi. Does anybody remember what this mime is about? That tefillah is milmato l'mayla adegate, and Torah, tefillah raises up and Torah brings down. So the Rebbe now brings that into this conversation. When a yidut madregev Torah seim nasi makes you a chazan, it's going to come down right and easy and right away. Stop talking. The Bamshoch, when a Yid davens, and davening is avoid, the person doing the work from below. So therefore, it depends on who's asking. And if you don't deserve, you're not going to get. And in order for a tachtin, for one below, to get his prayer answered through prayer, his dafkid is only kishahu ktsas keli lam shocha. You have to deserve it a little bit. That becomes the 5th point. Number 1, you daven alone, you get your answer beruchnis. Number 2, if it's a reasonable tefillah, you daven a minyan, you get a begashmis. Number 3, you got a really, really good chazan, you can ask for big stuff and you'll get it. Number 4, Number 4, even it's not your issue, right? Number 5, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve it. And you get it anyway. You know why? Torah. When you bring it down through Torah. Kivan shehi milmayla, since it's coming in the Torah way. You're learning Torah, it's happening by itself. Because you're in the Madeg of Torah Seyam Nasei, says the Rebbe, Hinim Sheches Lamata Mata, comes all the way down. And he adds these words, 4 lines on the top of page Shin Tzadik, which is Rosh Tevis Shliach Tzibur, which means Chazan. Gam Kishahamata Eine Keli, what's the next word? I'm amazing. Gam Kishahamata Eine Keli Klau. Laham Shach, you don't deserve it 1 drop. When the Rebbe puts the Bechia and his children to be the Chazan, he's going to bring rain to people who don't deserve it at all. That's the 5th idea. Which is why this fact, Shayidei Tfilas Abchiyu Bon, Abchiyu and his children daven together. They brought down physical rain and physical world, wind into the physical world. Parenthesis, the world didn't deserve it at all. Is because Shebit Filosam, in their prayer, Hoyagam, there was also Inyan Torah, the concept of Torah. Parenthesis, Rebbe put him to the Yom. And Rebbe, again, I'm going to just assume this is the Madreg of Terasei Nosei, and Terasei Nosei brings it into the world, even the world is not at all deserving it. Now, if Rebbe is so powerful that his Torah is the Madreg of Terasei Nosei, so why does he need them? Let him just learn Torah. Say, then it's going to rain. So he answers, and this you have to clear about the Maimon and the Zayar, to change the physical world, which is the idea of by bringing it down into the world from above Ishtalshalos. The Hamshachas is there, that only happens through davening, and in this aspect, and his children read Rebbe. So in other words, Rebbe was Terasei Nasi. Terasei Nasi means they could bring something into the world, even the world doesn't deserve it. But apparently it wasn't the same as Reb Shimon. Because he could bring it down into the world, even the world doesn't deserve it. But if you have to change Teva, he needed somebody else. And this is why he needed Reb Chiyuv. I'm going to read it, finish the paragraph, and then I'll explain it, okay? So Rebbe has a maila that he can bring it to you if you don't deserve it. Reb Chia and his children have a maila that they can change teva. The combination was that it rained. The advantage of davening is lost man, which is an arousal from below. To bring down godness which is above Ishtalshalos. Says the Rebbe, what bitl shebet tefillah, do what you're bitl. But when the person davens, who eved b'fnei Rabbi is like a slave in front of his master. And who is a slave in front of his master? Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov. But Achei born of Abedugmas Aves. Achei and his sons are like the Aves, who are Merkava Lalakus, they're a chariot for godliness. In other words, Merkava Bitl B'Tachlis. And in this way, they're better than Rebbe. But Achei Tfilosam, so Achei born of their prayer, of Achei and his sons, was a lost man, was an arouser from below. To bring down the highest lights because of their bittul. Because of the energy they brought into the world. They can make a change in the world until Tchias HaMesim. But to bring it into the world, when the world is not a vessel for it, this is like Deit Philosophy Hayagam. And Rebbe had to send them, he had the mile of Torah, So basically, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is higher than Rebbe. Why? Because Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's Torah not only could bring it into the world that doesn't deserve it, they can make a change b'gashmias. Rebbe is Terasei Nosei, but not like Rashbi. So he needs a b'chiyah. Okay, now, in case it's unclear, I'm just going to give you the math again. Step number 1, a Yidu David gets what he wants, at least Beruchnias. Step number 2, you daven with a minion, and your request is within the laws of nature, you'll be answered b'gashmias. Step number 3, if you daven with a minion and a very special chazan, so then you can even affect a bigger request being answered. Step number 4, Reb Chia and his sons can bring a request to you that's not even their interest, and they can change the gashmi as the situation. And the Rebbe can bring it into the world, even though the world doesn't deserve it at all. Rebbe can bring it into the world, even though the world doesn't do it at all, but Rabbi Chia and his sons can make it happen physically. So you have a combination. You need Rabbi Chia's Kayach HaTfilah and Rebbe's Kayach HaTorah for a nest to happen down here in this world that doesn't deserve it on a physical level. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did both of those things together himself. So Rebbe is Teirasei Amnasei, but it's a lower level of Teirasei Amnasei of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay? Now, if I say, do you understand? I'm just going to disappoint me and you, right? One more paragraph. The Zehu, this is the Pshat, that it says, if you remember the Al-Shich in the last class, that the Pasuk, Hashem Zefasei Tiftach of Yageti Lasech. Before we daven, we say to the Eibishter, make my davening like Torah. That's what this means. And the Al-Shich said that when you say Hashem Zefasei Tiftach of Yageti Lasech, it makes our davening like that of Chi and his children. Our prayer should be Kamei Tfilas of Chi Uban with Tfilah of Chi and his children. Sheba Maila, the Tfilas of Chi Uban of Shnei Chi and his children's Tfilah have two advantages. And the two advantages are not just Rabbi Chia, the Rabbi Chia plus Rebbe's sending them to the Yom. Number one, the power of their prayer, that it changes the physical world. The arousal from below that their prayer affected is Nailas Harba B'Yesod is very great. May Allah that the arousal from below a regular person. And therefore, they were able to change the physical world. And number two, their prayer has the mile of Teda, which brings the gift to the physical world, even to those who don't deserve it. This pasuk, Hashem Sefasei Tiftach, Ufi Yaget Tilasach, has two requests. Number one, the request that whatever we ask, we should get, that our mouth repeat David's praise. The Shatfila Shaloi that we daven, it could be Eine Achar Akede, we're repeating after the Eibishter, Achar Tfilasei DaKadosh Baruch Hu, after Hashem's prayer, or Tfilah DaKadosh Baruch Hu and Hashem's prayer is like Godam and Tfilas of Chi Ubanim is no less than Chi and his children, meaning that we should repeat after the Eibishter and guarantee that we should get what we ask for physically. But Abakosh Hashem Sefasei Tiftach, that Hashem should open up our lips, and it says in the Targum, Be'eraisa, that our davening is like learning Teda, is Shetfilasei Tiyah Gam a mile of Teda, our davening should have the mile of Teda, which is Amshacham a mile of Mata, bringing it into the world, even if we don't deserve it. For those of you who studied American politics, and you heard about a filibuster, this was a filibuster. Now, what's going to happen Thursday is I'm going to repeat this, and I'm going to finish the Maimed. I understand that this isn't fair, but I think we all prefer to do this.